Welcome back to the Megatherium Club podcast, guys and women and anybody else. My name is Sean, and I'm here with Zach and Spencer. Happy late Thanksgiving if you're in the USA. Did you guys have a good holiday season?
Oh, yeah. Stuffed myself full of turkey.
That lucky
Good.
turkey.
I had so much stuffing. It was so good. It was made with homemade sourdough bread. It was just so good.
I made stuffing for the first time. I can't tell you if I don't know. It was okay. But I think if I made sourdough bread and then made the stuffing, it would be even better.
There we go.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, next year, get a little sourdough starter and just go to town. I don't know. We were also just eating slices of sourdough bread all day, every day.
How much sourdough did you make?
Well, I didn't make it. My partner.
Did they
Her
like four loaves? I used an entire loaf of bread for my stuffing.
Oh, those carbs.
No, I don't know how many was made in the end.
Okay, but more than
a
one,
lot.
it sounds.
More than one. Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, you guys want to get into it?
I think so. Yeah.
Let's get into it. I think we're ready to roll. What's today's episode about, Sean?
So today's episode is all about size in the animal
Size
kingdom,
matters.
and specifically or especially for this episode, talking about big things, and I guess not necessarily just animals. I should correct myself on that. But I wanted to start it off and take a deeper look into what most people may consider common knowledge. And if you ask anyone what the largest creature they ever thought was, you might get a few different answers based on how much that person may have paid attention in science classes growing up or their accessibility to nature documentaries and books. But I would bet money that the most common answer is a blue whale. Would you guys argue that? Or
That's what I was always told.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue against it. That was what I learned in every single class growing up ever.
I was always told that blue whales are the biggest animal to ever exist now or in the past.
Same, but I wanted to break this down a little bit. Is this true? When we say biggest or largest, we're being a bit vague, really. But what does that mean? Are we talking about surface area? Are we talking about the longest? Do we mean heaviest? Are we looking at the mass? Also, by saying creature, we're kind of excluding a number of plants and fungi that could greatly outdo the blue whale in these categories if we're saying it's just the largest living thing ever. Well, we got to stick to the animal kingdom or it's already getting beat. But let's look at the longest creature ever. Does the blue whale fit this? Flat out answer is no. There's multiple species of sauropods, the long necks, if you will, that were longer than the blue whale. The largest blue whale was 98 feet. There were dinosaurs such as Diplodocus and Supersaurus that exceeded that length by up to 30 more feet. Is it the longest creature alive today? Also, no. There are jellyfish that can exceed the 100-foot length, and bootlace worms and siphonophores, which that was a new word for me. Hadn't heard of that before.
What's a siphonophore?
You kind of think of it like a colonial organism. So it's made up of smaller units that all eventually create one large organism. And I guess you could kind of argue, well, each little piece is really the organism, but the whole thing behaves as one. And if you didn't know better, it would be one organism.
Oh, that's interesting. That plays into something I'm going to talk about a little later.
And that's what. So when I was in Tanzania studying abroad, we went swimming in the ocean off the coast, and I got stung by a colony organism acting as a jellyfish. So it wasn't a jellyfish like you see in SpongeBob. It was this long strand of individual organisms that all were acting as one, and I got tangled up in that.
Was it a man of war?
No, it wasn't.
Oh.
I have no clue what it was.
Oh, okay.
I just saw it. My arm went into it, and as soon as I moved my arm within it, it just dispersed. It basically dispersed out, and you could still see little chunks. And then I asked some of the folks around what they might have thought it was, and they're like, "Oh, it sounds like it was just this colony type of organism that goes around stinging stuff if it gets in the way." So,
did you have them pee on your arm then?
No, my friend offered, but they had a bottle of ammonia behind the bar for cleaning and that specific purpose.
Good.
No, yeah, Sean, I'll let you pee on me next time.
Good. Okay.
So, Yeah, even if we're not together, you'll just send me your
a bottle
sample.
Yeah.
If you guys want to videotape that, you could put it on the internet.
Probably make more money than this.
You mean the money that we've spent on this?
Yes.
The negative amount of money we made.
Put it on the Megatherium Club podcast OnlyFans.
Perfect. Yes. When are we going to release our calendar for next year?
Soon, because next year's almost here.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Go to the merch store. The one that we totally have.
Okay.
Perfect.
Well, back to the whales. What about mass? Blue whales have been known to reach a mass of 199 tons, but that is spelled TONNES. That's the metric unit. It is equivalent to 1,000 kilograms. I want to keep it the same throughout this presentation, if you will. So when I speak of tons, I will be talking in the metric unit. And that 1 metric ton is about 2,200 pounds instead of the American ton, which is 2,000 pounds. So 199 metric tons is over 438,000 pounds. That is really heavy. But does that compare to anything else? Before I compare other animals, I should first say blue whales actually consist of 4 species, maybe 5. These are distinguished by where they live, kind of like how different subspecies of orca are identified. The northern subspecies covers the Atlantic and Pacific. The northern Indian live year-round in the Indian Ocean. That's pretty fitting. The pygmy blue whale inhabits waters from Madagascar to Indonesia and further south to Australia and New Zealand.
Okay, how big is a pygmy blue whale? What constitutes pygmy when it comes to the biggest thing that's ever been around?
Well, I was gonna... You kind of jumped ahead of me a little bit, but I also don't know the exact sizes for it, but it's got to be the smallest of the blue whales, for sure. The Antarctic species are the ones found all around Antarctica, and they are the largest specimens so far. And they also do travel elsewhere throughout the year, but they all make different sounds, and they can communicate mostly only within their subspecies, and they have their own migration routes. The potential 5th subspecies is a population off the coast of Chile. There's still much debate whether they are genetically different enough to be called a separate subspecies. And I guess another side note, again, we find ourselves talking about human classification of animals that could potentially interbreed with each other, since their habitats do overlap a bit. And not only that, but blue whales in general have been documented breeding with fin whales to make fertile offspring hybrids. So scientific classification is cool, but it can also be silly at the end of the day when you're separating these organisms and they can still just interbreed and stuff. So
yeah, they don't really care about the boxes we try to put them in.
Yeah. And fin whales are quite a bit smaller than blue whales. So I wonder if, maybe pygmy blue whales are a bit closer to fin whales than the rest of the blue whales. I'm not too sure on that. Don't quote me, but that's what I was going to get on that. Maybe they're closer to the size of fin whales.
According to Wikipedia, the pygmy blue whale is only 24 meters long, or around 79 feet.
Okay, compared to the larger ones, they get up to about 30 meters.
Yeah,
okay.
But there's no weight.
Still really big.
Could still kill you.
Yeah, it still might squish you.
Okay, good to know. Back to the stats, though. Yes, when looking at massive animals alive today, the blue whale wins, for sure. Second place today would be given to the North Atlantic right whale, clocking in at almost 234,000 pounds, which is quite a bit different, or quite a bit less than what a blue whale can reach. Almost 200,000 pounds less. Like, that's the difference we're looking at. But I guess, again, we are talking about the largest blue whales, and then what we're calling another species. But there's definitely a range within blue whales. The next part is where it gets interesting. Growing up, all I remember reading and hearing is how the blue whale is the largest animal to ever live, but paleontologists are making more and more discoveries that puts this statement to this. I already mentioned that some sauropods reached lengths that definitely exceeded blue whales, but what about mass? I don't know if either of you two had heard of this paper that came out earlier this year, but in 2023, a paper about new mass estimations of super sauropods rivaling that of the great whales came out, and it was written by Paul and Laramendi. So I don't want to get into the weeds of it because that's going to take way too long and get us sidetracked. But I encourage you to look into this yourself, listeners, if you're interested, or if I'm doing a horrible job at explaining this to you. But here's the short of the long. Paleontologists have size estimations of most of the large sauropods. How they get these numbers is a bit beyond the research that I have done, and I encourage you to look into it more. One approach they take, if they only have partial fossils, say only a few bones, they will compare these bones to other specimens, some relatives. The ratio of the femur or tibia to overall size is a currently useful approach. Partial fossils have been discovered of a new sauropod that makes even Argentinosaurus look small. And I may butcher this name, but as you guys already know, I suck at scientific names. But it is Bruhathcaesaurus.
Gee, what?
Bruhathcaesaurus matlei, but I'm going to call it Bruhathcaesaurus for the rest of this talk. It is arguably the largest sauropod ever discovered, but it's a partial specimen. And I say as of right now, December 2023, because this could change next month, and that's why paleontology is fun and exciting. Yeah, they did not discover a full skeleton, only a few bones, the femur and tibia specifically, and compared those ratios to relatives. When scaling the animal up from the tibia, results came out ranging from, it's quite the range, but the mass of these organisms could have been 120 to 240 tons. Now remember, the blue whales were 199 tons. So they're saying this thing could have been 40 more tons than a blue whale. But the scientists were disregarding the 240 tons a bit by saying those proportions came from a comparison of Patagotitan, which had really unique ratios and likely not the same as Bruhathcaesaurus. The Patagotitan scaling is excluded. The average estimate based on tibia length is 165 tons. When basing the estimations of the femur, though, the average was only 125 tons. This left researchers with a possibility range of 110 to 170 tons, and then they scaled that down to just try to be a little bit more conservative. So the lower end of Bruhathcaesaurus is 110 to 130 tons, which is absolutely massive and dwarfs almost all other sauropods, and is definitely the largest animal on land discovered so far. And I said animal, but not quite reaching the mass of the biggest blue whales. They're probably, rival an average blue whale for sure, but maybe, let's just say for now, because we don't know for sure, that it didn't quite get over the blue whale mass. But was there another prehistoric creature that might have dwarfed the blue whale? Welcome to the chat, Perucetus colossal, or P. colossal for short, aka the colossal whale from Peru. This paper also came out earlier this year, and this was another incomplete specimen, but just based on its vertebra and ribs, this was a massive creature. The ribs alone were 5 feet long, but what was truly impressive with the vertebrae was that each vertebra weighed over 200 pounds each.
God. One vertebra weighs more than me.
That was my next sentence. I was like, just one of these weighs more than each of us here. Like, separately, not combined. But it is estimated to be about 20 meters in length. So, a bit shorter than a blue whale, and maybe just a bit shorter than, as Zach said, the pygmy blue whales. But looking at its bones, researchers believe it could have been heavier, because the bones are much more dense than a blue whale's. I have seen estimations for its mass ranging anywhere from 85 to 340 tons.
Jeez.
Again, the blue whale was 199 tons. So the high-end estimates of this ancient whale is 140 tons more. Basically a whole sauropod more than the largest blue whale.
God.
This thing was a giant sausage rolling in the deep, basically. And I guess it actually wasn't in the deep waters. It's believed to have been in more shallow areas, feeding on the bottom. But the head was not discovered yet, so we can't actually be sure what or how it ate yet. And despite that, the current artwork of this thing looks ridiculous. And I don't know if you guys have pulled up a picture yet or not.
Throw one into the chat. I want to see this.
Let me see if I can get that. Basically, it looks like a giant manatee that has ate nothing but McDonald's for its entirety of its life, with like a weird rat, dog, wolf head on it that just does not fit.
Weird. How do they depict the head if they've never even found it?
So they are using the head of all other basilosaurs because it's it's a whale, ancient whale relative like Basilosaurus.
Oh, what the? This thing is like it's like a sausage or like an animal balloon, and then the head is just like teeny tiny.
It's like termite queens. Their body is like ballooned up and they can't move, but they still have these tiny little mandibles that, they need help feeding themselves.
Oh, and he's got little vestigial legs on him too.
I was just about to say, are we just going to comb over that aspect? It's tiny little, like, human-sized legs.
They're probably human-sized too, just on this 340 metric ton body.
Wow.
I would love to go back and see this sausage just feeding on the bottom or whatever. I can't imagine it was a pursuit predator. If it was, good luck to everything else. But yeah, massive. It's very cool. And also, I guess I should say, two things about this creature would just rewrite textbooks. If it was really that large, then the blue whale is no longer the largest animal that has ever lived. That's one. That's the obvious one. We can't tell how much blubber or muscle was on it, but with these size estimations and those bones being so much denser than a blue whale, it's a good chance it was bigger. The second is that this whale predates any current estimate as to when whales were beginning to just reach behemoth sizes by almost 30 million years. And most giant whales today are baleen, so they are filter feeders, and whales at this time were mostly toothed.
Had baleen whales evolved yet?
Not that I know of. Can't confirm or deny, but my knowledge is that they're not present yet. Or they were definitely smaller if they were. Like the blue whale did not exist during this time.
Yeah, but it's a toothed whale, so like.
Well, that we don't know yet. We don't have the head. That they're giving it the head of Basilosaurus because.
Oh yeah, because they don't know
why not?
What it looks like.
Yeah,
that's just the closest thing they have to estimate what it might have looked like.
Yes,
this thing's wild.
Right.
Yeah, I'm kind of blown away. I hope. Okay, so maybe the three of us, we go out, we rent a boat, and we go look for these fossil skulls.
I don't think we need a boat. Where'd they find it?
Peru.
Oh yeah,
in Peru.
Yeah. So first we need if we could get a boat to get to Peru, sure.
Perfect. Okay.
I'll take a plane. I'll meet you there.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
I think I'm on the wrong side of the U.S. to take a boat. That would be an extra long trip.
The Panama Canal. You could do that.
Yeah, that's a thing. Forget that exists. Cool things coming out in paleontology in 2023, and they're all talking about size.
We're in the golden age of paleontology.
Golden age of giant sausage.
Wow.
Who wants to go next?
I'm more than happy to share mine.
All right, Spencer, what you got? Tell me what you got. What you really, really got?
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna go off that energy, but I lost it already. Here we go. So the first thing I want to talk about, really, just quickly, is flight. So flight first evolved 350 million years ago in the insects. Yay,
bugs.
Insects did it first. Bugs. By the way, I do want to do a whole episode on insects did it first. So anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about that maybe in that one. But since then, many other groups of animals have also evolved flight. Flight is super great. It can get you away from predators. It can get you closer to prey that much faster. You can move around faster. It's just wonderful. So it evolved plenty of times. In dinosaurs, the avian dinosaurs specifically, what we have, modern birds, the mammals, i.e. bats, and yeah. So
you're forgetting one.
Oh, am I? Oh, man. Yes, I am. Well, hold now. In all of the groups of animals that evolved flight, you can still find modern examples of them today. You can find bats all over the place. You can find birds all over the place, and you can find insects all over the place. All of them still flying, doing what they need to do. Whereas another group, the reptiles, they have seemed, in the modern era, they seem to be left out of that flying capacity. There are a couple specific examples that we can point to that are gliding reptiles. The genus Draco, which, yes, like Draco Malfoy. Draco meaning dragon, is a genus of gliding lizards that you can find in, in Indonesia, I think. Anyway, there's also the genus Chrysopelia, which is the genus of gliding snakes. And so, yeah, while they can glide pretty efficiently and pretty well, jumping from, limb to limb within the trees, they're not true flyers. They don't have powered flight. So they can't go up any more than they really started off at, unless if they get a nice gust of wind, but still, it's not true powered flight. However, at one time, the reptiles did rule the skies, and they ruled it for millions and millions of years. And that group is known as the pterosaurs. And within the pterosaurs evolved the largest flying animal that has ever existed, which is super sad that it's just gone today. So discovered in the 1970s by Douglas A. Lawson in Texas, was the most famous pterosaur, the quetzalcoatlus, specifically the species Northropi. Northropi? I don't know.
Northropi.
One of those two. Northropi? Northropy? Okay, I think it's pie. Either way, which they dated back to living in the late Cretaceous, evolved went extinct around 66 million years ago. And so Lawson decided to name this creature after the Aztec god Quetzalcoatl, which is the feathered serpent god representing many things, and among them, wind, which is why I'm assuming he picked that one. So back in the day, naming, you kind of had to name. We talked about this in a previous episode, but one of the categories that you could pull names from were mythological creatures. So Lawson decided to use such a cool one, in my opinion, and the fact that it represents the god of wind, I'm sure he's like, man, this giant flying creature, just can't imagine like the power behind these wings. So it didn't, in none of the readings that I found, and including the papers that he originally wrote on these, he didn't explain why he named it after this one, or at least I couldn't find that. But that was my kind of guesstimate. It was the god of wind. Yeah, so anyway, Lawson immediately knew he had the biggest flyer with an estimated wingspan initially of 15.5 meters or 50 feet.
Whoa.
But just a year later, Lawson himself started to question whether this giant reptile was actually even capable of flight. And initially, as more and more fossils were being discovered in Texas, in the early 1980s, the wingspan was estimated to be 25.8 meters or 84.6 feet.
What?
Yeah.
Did they find a baby the first time?
No, so they did find smaller specimens, and they initially thought they were younger versions, but later on they would become a different species of Quetzalcoatlus, which would then end up being named after Lawson as Quetzalcoatlus lawsoni. Anyway, but no, I don't know where this study got their stuff from. I couldn't actually find the article. It was cited in another paper that was like, this is like the largest wingspan estimated, but most modern studies, at least as of 2021, put it around 10 to 12 meters or 32 to about 40 feet across, which is still just ginormous. Mm-hmm. And most estimates put this thing standing at around 5.5 meters or about 18 feet tall. Any like image that you look it up online, it'll kind of picture it right next to a giraffe. You know, basically this thing is as tall as a giraffe with a wingspan of 40 feet, and I don't get too far ahead of myself, but it can fly. So I have to also highlight when we're talking about just how big this thing is in terms of weight. This paper that I read It highlighted, or I have to highlight a quote. So it stated that the weight estimates range from, and I quote, an anorexic 30 kilograms or 66 pounds to an obese 544 kilograms, around 1,200 pounds. But most come in around 200 to 250 kilograms, or around 440 to 550 pounds. Still, still massive, but not quite as small as a dog, like in terms of mass or weight, and not quite as heavy as a polar bear at 1,200 pounds. So somewhere around the middle, but most are leaning towards, this thing was pretty chunky, not as chunky as a modern day polar bear or Kodiak bear. And so, now the question is, could this thing fly? And I gave you the answer, yes, it can fly, but people for a long time debated exactly how it could actually fly. So for sometimes folks said that no, they couldn't fly. They simply walked around and they scavenged carrion or mollusks or arthropods, essentially just kind of walking around flightless, doing whatever they needed.
Walking around on those 80-foot wings.
On those 80-foot wings, yeah. And they're like, they just got too big and decided that they could just scavenge what they could find walking around.
They got too obese.
They got too obese, essentially, yeah. However, no, more and more studies are like, nope, these things definitely could fly. So again, how could they actually fly? And I remember that when I was first learned about this creature, it was still the hypothesis that they needed like cliffs. They would like go up to a cliff edge and they would jump off and they would just kind of open up their wings and glide. And they were gliding species. And so like modern day albatross, they would open up their wings and essentially let the massive size of their wings create enough lift to move them up and down through the atmosphere. And people are like, okay, so they had this gliding lifestyle. That means they probably were similar to other pterosaurs in that they were like skimmers. To get their food, they would simply skim across the top of the water, dip their beak down, and scoop up fish and eat them as they were kind of flying around. But no, more studies were like, their beak shape, their toothless beak shape, no, they likely did not skim water. And other studies were like, they were just too big to actually be able to glide like that. They're just too big and too heavy. Okay, so then what did they do? Well, also, where these are found is not next to like the ocean. They're found way farther inland, still in areas that probably had, enough water, but a lot of open fields, some shorelines in terms of maybe some lakes, some rivers, but not the ocean. So where most pterosaurs lived at the time. So like, okay, there's also no cliffs around here, so they wouldn't have been able to jump off of anything. So that means that they just had to just take off if they flew. So yeah, that's kind of what they did. So modern studies were looking more at the breastplate of these animals and stating, okay, their breastplates are huge, they're well developed, meaning that they had some powerful flight muscles on them, meaning that they probably could just take off from the ground, but they probably weren't flying for very long. They would fly up, fly around a little bit, and then land somewhere else. And their ecology in terms of feeding is closely related to modern day storks or herons. They would walk around and they would just kind of pick up prey that was kind of underneath them. They probably ate smaller prey, if anything, that they could catch in their beaks. So yeah, they were just massive. Standing as tall as a giraffe, they could fly around and just eat whatever they could basically come across. And that's pretty much it for them. I mean, the crazy thing is these pterosaurs are among the most talked about pterosaurs of all time. But there's not many fossils found from them. Most fossils are just parts of bones. And so all of the articles were basically like, we don't actually know a whole lot about them because we just don't have enough information yet. But this is the best guess as to what they actually did. So, yeah.
Have you watched either of the new documentaries, either on Netflix or Apple or anything like that?
No, I need to. I found out that they were talked about in those documentaries.
That's what I was going to say. I think in both of them, or three of them, I can't remember how many there are, but a bunch came out this year with prehistoric creatures, and I can't remember if it was quetzalcoatlus or Hatzegopteryx, but it was really cool seeing them kind of walking around stork-like, but obviously not, because storks have legs that they can really walk on, not
right.
not
Bipedal
wings.
versus quadrupedal.
Yeah, but there are these massive, tall creatures that were just looking for like baby sauropods amongst the brush, and that's what they were eating was sauropod
Baby
babies.
dinosaurs.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see that.
All I can think about is the sheer force of the wind as they take off. That's all I can think about right now.
Yeah, and I mean that's why I was like, man, that's got to be why they named it after the Aztec god. And so I don't know. Of course, Lawson at first was like, could these things actually fly? So either way, wind, yeah, powerful things. Sean, I'm glad you suggested the other genus that you mentioned. What was it, Sean?
Hatzegopteryx.
Oh, thank you very much. I specifically left that out until now. I was hoping that you were going to say, Spencer, but what about this other giant flying creature?
Yeah, well, Spencer, what about this other one? Is it?
Oh,
is
thanks,
it,
Sean.
Is it bigger
I feel
than Hatzegopteryx?
I feel a but actually coming on.
No, I actually don't know which is bigger. I just know that there is a discussion about which is bigger, and they know for sure. And I don't want to take away too much from you, but I know the heads are very different on them, and the Hatzegopteryx has a much heavier head. And when you said you're going to do this, I was just like, oh, cool. I am bored. I'm going to look into quetzalcoatlus because I also just enjoy learning about them. And I didn't go into too much detail on the quetz. I ended up just going deep into Hatzegopteryx. And then, like, the biggest question was, in a fight, which of these two would win?
Oh, my God. Yeah, when I Googled which was bigger, just, like, trying to figure it out just from, like, a Google search, that's what came up. It was like Quetzalcoatlus versus Hatzegopteryx. And I was like, oh my God, this is like that old, I think it was that old Animal Planet show where they would like put two animals that would never actually fight
Animal
against
Fight
each
Night.
other. Yeah, Animal Fight Night. Yeah.
There is a children's book at the bookstore that I saw like a week ago that's all about just pitting animals against each other and who would win. And I
Children's book?
I mean, it was like in the children's section. It wasn't in like the adult section by any means. And like not infant, not single digit age, but a young kid would probably be like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, what would win, a crocodile or a Dilophosaurus? Wow, I want to know.
I
feel like that's another episode.
It is for sure another
I'll go
episode.
Get that book now.
Yeah, maybe I'll save mine. I won't mention the one that I remember.
Oh, okay.
I'll save it. So, but anyway, I do want to talk about them a little bit, and you didn't give too much away, so don't worry. Okay. So these ones also lived during the late Cretaceous period, but in modern day Transylvania, which intrinsically makes them cool, in my opinion. And so it's highly likely that these creatures also shared the same lifestyle as the Quetzalcoatlus, and that they were like herons or storks. They walked around. They picked up baby sauropods. That's what they're always pictured picking up, which is incredibly funny to see a long-necked dinosaur just in the beak of this giant reptile. Which, if you imagine if it was an adult, that's even more funny. But anyway. And so, yeah, they had the similar lifestyle, but this specific genus was concentrated on an island, the Hateg. I'm not pronouncing that probably right at all. Island. It was a big island that was essentially in Central Europe because there was an inland sea that kind of cut everything off. So Europe obviously did not look like it does today, but they were on this one island, and everything that I found was like, these pterosaurs were the apex predator of the island. Nothing could get them. If you were lucky as a sauropod, you managed to escape them and get a little bit bigger, but even then, like, watch out for these guys. Now, Sean kind of talked about the skull a little bit, and that a lot of the pterosaurs that are related to both of these, they're known for these super long, like extremely long, and some of the longest skulls in the animal kingdom in terms of just length. Long, slender, and sharp. The Quetzalcoatlus definitely had a long, slender beak. However, these guys had a short and stout head, really kind of much wider. The beak was a lot shorter and thicker. And scientists were like, okay, well, how the heck did they actually even hold these things up? Well, and I think it was a couple of years ago in 2021, a study, or 2017, a study came out and looked at they found a vertebrate, and they're like, look how thick and robust this vertebrate was. But the vertebrate themselves were also shorter and stout as well. So they weren't as tall as quetzalcoatlus because their necks were just shorter because they had to have stronger and thicker bones in order to actually hold up their thicker and heavier skull. Now, their skull wasn't so thick and heavy that they couldn't actually fly, because there was another paper that looked at the skull and how there are specific porous zones within the different bones of the skull that actually made it lighter for like how big it is, but it was still a lot bigger, and so they were actually a little bit shorter than Quetzalcoatl. In terms of their wing length, they basically, the study in 2003 was like, yeah, everything that we have found up until now is supporting that they had pretty much the same exact wingspan as Quetzalcoatlus. And so, okay, which one's bigger? Either one. They probably weighed about the same as well. Well, that's not true. Sorry.
Hat's got that thick old head, though.
It's got the thick head, so it probably weighed more, but it probably wasn't as big in terms of like surface area. But the study in 2003, it said, it goes along to say that, and I quote, "It is difficult to demonstrate that Hatzegopteryx was," okay, so it is difficult to demonstrate that these guys were larger, but both were simply giants. So it doesn't really say one way or another that, yes, they are indeed bigger, but it probably in the end actually goes to Quetzalcoatlus. And the other paper that I mentioned a little bit earlier, talking about the anorexic 30 kilograms, also stated, this paper was hilarious. They also stated that things in Texas are bigger, and it's probably true for this species here. Largest flying reptile came out of Texas, which makes perfect sense. So, yeah. So I got to hand it off to, what's up?
So these things pretty much got knocked out with the asteroid, just like they definitely couldn't avoid that stuff.
No, yep. There was no way that once the asteroid hit and wiped out the dinosaurs, their food, if they survived, their food source was gone.
If they survived,
so big.
They were pretty much site zero. Or
they pretty much were. But I can imagine the ones in Transylvania definitely lived for a little bit longer. But even then,
like 10 minutes.
That's what I was going to say. When you lose the sauropods, you lose them. So.
Yep.
Also, kudos to the publisher of that paper for accepting everything's just bigger in Texas as an argument.
Yeah. Yep. I need to put more little sayings in my papers. Well, papers, like I'm writing papers. Oh my God. No, in my thesis that I did write a long time ago.
My thesis that I did wrote.
Hey, I'm from Texas. I talk how I want. Not really.
Sorry to any Texans listening to this podcast. We love you.
We love you too. Or I love you. God dang it. All right, Zach, I'm excited to hear about your specimen.
Yeah, so as we were talking about earlier, there's many different ways to quantify and measure what constitutes as the biggest, right? Is something the tallest? Is it the widest? Heaviest, most expansive? Does it take up the most area or volume? Considering all these different ways to talk about quote unquote biggest, I think we would be remiss if we did not talk about an organism living on our planet today that smashes every other known organism, including the ones that have been talked about already, in every one of these categories. Now, I say organism because I am branching off, pun intended, from the animal category of life. Pando, the quaking aspen, Populus tremuloides, stretches over... Actually, Can you guys remind me about how long your dinosaur, not your dinosaurs, but your animals were?
30 meters, almost 100 feet.
Yeah.
18 feet.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, Pando stretches over, I guess this is an area, not a length, but he stretches over 106 acres.
It's pretty close.
In central Utah. So, like, if you look at Utah, you put a dot dead center, that's where Pando is. And it kind of goes back to the communal organism, I guess, that Spencer got stung by, because it's an aspen, and as I'll talk about it a little later, Pando is comprised of 47,000 stems, or ramets, as it's called with aspens, and it has one interconnected root system. So fittingly, Pando is Latin for "I spread," because I mean, it covers 106 acres. It's spread out pretty good. And altogether, this organism weighs, guess, just give me a guess. Compared to what your guys' animals were, just take a guess at how much Pando weighs altogether.
200,000 metric tons.
I'm gonna say, I wanna use Sean's animal here, like 50 of Sean's whales.
Spencer, you're actually really close. So 200,000 metric tons is a little excessive. This one is only 6,000 metric tons, or somewhere between 13 and 14 million pounds for our U.S. listeners. Yeah, so to put that into perspective, this is more than 40 times larger than the biggest blue whales out there. So, like, take 40 of those blue whales, stack them all together, and that is Pando.
Dang.
Yeah, so one question is, how did Pando reach such an immense size? So aspens are special trees in that they grow what we call clonally. Like, there's one root system, and that spreads out, and from that root system sprouts new baby aspen clones. And each one of these clones is, as it sounds, they are genetically identical to the original tree that sprouted. And so Pando has gotten its huge size from growing clonally. And so when you're out in that tree, you're actually just in a forest. Like, this tree is not just a tree, it's an entire forest. And there are thousands of aspen trees in this forest. And each one of them is actually just one small part of an individual organism.
You're gonna trigger my dad when he listens to this. Growing up in Colorado, we had a number of aspen trees in our backyard, and they were all the same tree, just like this one. Obviously not as big, but they would always send up shoots. And my dad hated when they got too big for the lawnmower. So we had to go out by hand and snip them away. And eventually, when one started to die, they all started to die. So we had to take one. We had one tree die, and then the next couple of years, like, every other aspen tree started dying off.
Oh no! Because it's
my
all
dad
the same
had to
thing.
take down like 10 trees in like 2 years because they all died together.
Oh no! Like, just the root system just collapsed,
Yeah,
and they all died.
Yeah.
That's sad. And I'm also going to be talking about that, something similar, in a little bit.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Can you tell it's an aspen by the way it is?
You can, in fact, tell it's an aspen by the way it is. It's pretty neat, actually.
Best YouTube video ever.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, for
That's pretty neat.
for anybody that has no idea what we're talking about, Google or YouTube the Nature Walk. It's a great video, and I think there's actually like three episodes of it or something. But yeah, it's a great one. Also, I want you guys to take a guess at how old Pando might be.
500 years.
I already know because I remember studying this in botany.
Okay, well, I want to hear what you have to say. Well, actually, first Sean go, and then I want to hear what Spencer says.
I said 500 years.
Okay, not bad. Spencer, what are you going to say?
So I remember reading this specifically being from that area of the U.S. And my professor she basically like created her own textbook for the class, and she still included this. And then when I read it, I was like, there's no way this is real. So I remember doing research on this back in the day. And I remember it, there was a couple different estimations as to how old it was. But most people are like, it's 70,000 years old. And other people are like, yeah, maybe that could work. Because the idea was, if they're that old, how did they survive the last ice ages? And they're like, well, the glacier and the ice sheets never got this far down south. And so they could have just like survived through that. And yeah, but that's what I remember. That's what I remember it being. So I don't know. Is that still right? Did they figure out something more?
Well, let me just say, it doesn't seem like anybody has an idea about how old it is. Literally every page I clicked on with the question, how old is Pando, gave me a different answer. So I got estimates ranging from 8,000 to 80,000 to 2.6 million years old.
Wow.
What?
Yeah.
2.6 million?
Yeah. But I will say that each of these kind of came to the consensus that the first, Pando clone sprouted at the end of the last ice age, which was really confusing to me and contradictory because, like, the claim that said 2.6 million years, like, within the same sentence said at the end of the last ice age, which was only 10,000 years ago. So I don't know if anybody really knows, but, like, if I had to guess, I'm just going to go with, like, between 8 to 10,000 years because that's the end of the last ice age, which sort of seems to be the consensus.
Well, so they said the last clone sprouted then, but what, like, could there have been roots underground for, like, I don't know, a million years ago?
No, they're saying that's the first. That was the first clone that sprouted.
Okay,
like,
okay.
From seed, Pando sprouted at the end of the last ice age is kind of what I gathered from all of my research. I found so many different answers to this question that
Gotcha.
I really don't know. I'm gonna exclude the 2.6 million years ago. I don't think that is it, because if that were it, we would have like a living stand of aspen, like with a petrified forest of aspen underneath it, pretty much.
Right, yeah.
like which would be sweet. But that's not the case. Yeah, so I'm leaning towards the 9 to 10,000 year range, which was the end of the last ice age, because I can't really see it having germinated under a mile of ice, which, I mean, that's what the Midwest was.
It was in Utah, though, right?
Yeah, it was in Utah, so, like, maybe the ice... I don't know whether or not the ice sheets reached that far or not. I'm not a glaciologist, so... there's a lot of different estimates, but no matter which one you go with, this is an extremely old tree that has had the same genome this entire time. And yeah, according to Wikipedia, and whatever study Wikipedia was citing, it's actually retained its genetic integrity really well, which I thought was really cool. So we could almost have put Pando in our living fossil episode, which is kind of neat.
As itself. As an individual, not just a species.
Not just a species, but like the individual Pando could have been in our living fossil episode. However, there's a study that was published by Paul Rogers and Darren McAvoy from Utah State University that has found that within the last 30 to 40 years, Pando has actually stopped growing, and therefore it's thought to be slowly dying. And this could be due to a number of different factors, including the chronic drought conditions that we are seeing in the western United States, herbivory from animals like mule deer, and fire suppression. And these combined factors have led to a severe lack of regeneration for Pando. So when these older clones die, which individual stems of aspen, they only live about 100 years. So on the scale of 10 to 80,000 years, that's a drop in the bucket, and there's nothing to replace those once they die, because they're not seeing these aspen seedlings because they're getting nibbled to death by mule deer, basically.
Yeah.
And
I wonder,
what were you gonna say?
I wonder, Oh, I was just gonna say, I wonder if there's a way, like, to protect areas of it. I mean, I know that they do like a lot of exclusion areas in Rocky Mountain National Park. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering if they would ever implement something like that.
Yeah, I was actually going to talk about that in a little bit.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, but before that, I was gonna mention another vulnerability that I see with Pando is that it's 106 acres of not just like a single species, but a single genotype of that species, which would make Pando exceptionally vulnerable to things like insects and disease. And there are things like bark beetles and root rot fungal diseases and bacterial infections that are slowly taking out some of the individual mature stems or ramets of Pando. So if there was like an outbreak of some like poplar borer, I feel like Pando would just go down because it's the same genetic tree for 106 acres.
The whole thing is weak to the same thing.
Yeah, like we see, hundreds of acres of cornfields just go down to one outbreaking insect because there's not enough genetic diversity. And when there's no genetic diversity, I feel like that just makes it extremely vulnerable. But
We need
all
to
of
give
this,
it that BT
yeah,
gene.
we need. Is there a BT for beetles, like Coleoptera? I know there's like Diptera, there's Lepidoptera specific BTs.
Yeah.
but I don't know
Yeah.
about-
There's got to be for beetles.
Probably.
Because like rootworm. That's a beetle.
Is it?
Yeah, northern rootworm, western corn rootworm. That's a
Oh,
beetle.
what does the
Pretty
beetle
sure.
look like?
Pretty sure. I could be making that up.
Gotcha.
Western corn rootworm. It looks like a spotted cucumber but with stripes. And I know there's striped cucumber beetles, but they also look slightly different. That's right. So I'm pretty
cool.
sure like we use BT for that stuff. Don't quote me, even though I'm in this type of research. But
You haven't like specifically done BT research on it yourself, though.
no. But it's like one of the main pests in corn. So in corn's BT traded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So that,
there's actually
logically,
issues with it becoming resistant to it. So yeah, there is, and we don't properly use it to prevent resistances. So
we
there we go.
overuse it. Yeah, sweet. That's awesome. I love it. But back to Pando. All of those things I was talking about, how Pando's dying from fire suppression, mule deer, and maybe some beetles and diseases. That's not to say Pando's doomed. It's been here for thousands of years. So this genetic code, it works, right? Like it works. It's been working for thousands, maybe even millions of years, according to some sources. And if it was dying, it's going to take a while to die because it's 106 acres of aspen forest. And especially considering that what kills most trees, like fire, actually rejuvenates an aspen stand. Like there's studies that show that a fire that goes through an aspen stand actually stimulates sucker growth. So, yeah.
Those suckers.
Yeah, those suckers. And a sucker being like a new sprout coming up from the root system. And there are actually some scientists and the U.S. Forest Service and other collaborating entities like Friends of Pando and the National Forest Foundation that are trying to find ways to keep Pando healthy and alive and just keep it around because it's such an exceptional organism that like it'd be a shame if we lost it. So, as Spencer said before, like in Rocky Mountain National Park where they have exclusion fences to keep things out like deer and elk to keep them from eating all the plants, they actually have 90 of the 106 acres fenced off to keep herbivory down. And so that they can also have control plots to see how much of an effect or what effect that herbivory actually has on Pando, which is really interesting because there's like it totally removes the genetic component of like how different trees might respond to the same stimulus, like being eaten. So like they have some really cool studies going on, and they're also using different experimental disturbances to enhance aspen regeneration, like mechanically removing older stems, which means they're cutting them down and removing them and seeing if it regenerates if new shoots come up. And they're also using experimental prescribed fire to try to stimulate what I said earlier, that sucker growth. and trying to see how that works by, doing prescribed burns and simulating a natural fire. So while this expansive area that Pando occupies, it might shrink in the near future because it's not doing so hot, I'm pretty confident that with all these people that are so interested in protecting it, that it's going to persist for many years to come. And yeah, I just think it's really cool, and I kind of want to go see it next fall when all the aspens. To go see it. Yeah, when all the aspens start changing, we got 106 acres of yellow basically. It's going to look like it's on fire. Probably changes year to year, but I'd say like October, beginning of October.
All right, I'll see you there.
See you there. And that's all I got for Pando.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. You wonder, we're all kind of aware that forests and forest communities and the different trees and, the associated fungal complex, they all talk to each other, right? So I wonder, like, what is going through Pando's, like, hive mind in a way? What is it thinking about? I mean, at that point, like, you should be so good at gathering all the resources that you need and sharing it amongst everybody else, right? Like, maybe this part of the acreage is in a drier spot compared to this other spot, and so everybody can get the amount of water that they need. So I wonder how well this entire organism is doing that, and is it better or worse at it than like an entire forest community that you might find somewhere else? I don't know.
That would be really cool, actually, to see, like, yeah, because there's the whole mycorrhizal network thing, and the what's called the wood wide web or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to see, like.
But if you're one organism, you don't need that. You just, you would still need the fungi to get other stuff, to bring in salts and nutrients and blah blah blah.
Yeah, but you could just share it with yourself.
Like, communicate. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a really cool study. You could probably put some like radio marked carbon or something in one spot, and just like put like a ton of it, obviously, so that you can go back and find it later and detect it, and then test different trees within a expanding radius around it and see like how far does that travel.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Yeah, that'd be a really cool study to do. I wonder if it's already been done, honestly.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure somebody has taken a look at that at some point. So
yeah, that'd be a really cool study. I did actually a while ago. I heard about, I don't remember who it was or what, but somebody they made a recording of like the sounds of Pando or something, and I don't know. It made like Popular Science news for a little bit about the sounds that this aspen tree makes, and I feel like everybody was just like going nuts about it, at least in like the select podcasts that I listened to, and they played samples of it, and I remember listening to it and like expecting something shocking or amazing, but it's literally like what you would expect if you just like sit under an aspen tree, close your eyes and listen.
Oh, so just the quaking part of an aspen.
Yeah, I was like, this is supposed to be some revolutionary recording. I don't get it, because I was just like, I was listening to it and waiting for something to happen, but it's literally just like a background noise that you would fall asleep to.
I mean, that maybe that's why everybody's going crazy. Like, I can finally sleep.
I can finally sleep listening to Pando.
Listening to Pando. I mean, I will say I do like the sound of trembling aspens.
I mean, yeah, it's a nice sound, but I was expecting. I kept thinking I was missing something because I don't know. People were going nuts about it, and I didn't hear anything. I was like turning the volume up in my car, like, what am I missing? And it was nothing. It was just the sounds of like wind going through the trees.
Yeah. Well. Beautiful. And okay, so we have to go to Pando and camp out
and listen to it.
Pando and listen to it for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, we'll have to listen for ourselves, make our own recording.
Perfect. That'll be one of the episodes, just straight Pando music.
I don't know. I feel like there's some sort of copyright infringement now. It's already been done.
Everybody will be asleep at 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
perfect.
Hypnotic.
Okay.
But, yeah, guys, that's Pando.
That's Pando.
I like
The
it.
biggest
So-
organism is, to my knowledge, by orders of magnitude, the biggest organism to have ever existed.
Yeah, I would say that, yeah, it's definitely the biggest. There's one that we didn't talk about. It's that fungal sheet in the Pacific Northwest.
The
I'm assuming
armillaria.
that's smaller. Yeah, is that smaller than Pando then? I thought it was pretty comparable.
I didn't look into it that much.
Well, I mean, that's another episode for part 2 of this series. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just Googled armillaria. I know it's an armillaria root rot fungus. And I just Googled armillaria biggest organism. And it says the largest organism on Earth is a fungus. So
Oh,
Yeah.
there's probably some contention about which one's bigger.
nope, you're wrong,
Right.
Zach.
Oh, shit. This one is, it occupies a much larger area, that's for sure.
Okay, well, we don't want to give too much away for part 2.
All right.
Also, the entire time when we were thinking about, what's the title of this one going to be, and I'm not saying that this has to be the title, but I know that Sean has volunteered to use this as his first editing episode.
I did.
Well, yeah, didn't you say that?
No, I said
Okay,
I did.
but
I did. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was like, I thought we just talked about this. So Sean gets the name of it, but I will put my name in the hat. And the first music video I ever saw, and this was on MTV, was Backstreet Boys' Larger Than Life. Now, of course, can we actually use that name? I think so. Larger Than Life is just a saying.
Yeah.
So,
I don't,
you know.
are we still recording right now? Is this part of
Yes.
the
Yeah,
episode?
we're still recording.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't done our signature thing
Well,
yet, Zach.
real quick too, I wanted to mention that when you were talking about ways that flight has evolved in life in creatures, I wasn't meaning that you were leaving out the pterosaurs or reptiles. Dinosaurs did evolve flight in 2 separate paths, and
Oh yes, the
lesser known being like the bat-like dinosaurs. That's what I was hinting at earlier, but we can't forget them in case anybody's listening. Like, hey, they forgot something here. Just
Yeah.
No,
Dino
yep,
bats.
I saw they were listed in my many lists that I had.
Oh, okay.
But I thought I would just like go pretty generic, I guess. So
Gotcha.
yes, but no, good point. Good point, Sean. Appreciate that. Before we end it, I do want to do a shout out for this episode. We got our first official email.
Yes, we did.
Fan mail. So thank you, Vanessa of New Hampshire, for reaching out. She reached out about our Lazarus species, and yeah, she was talking about when Zach asked us, what is a deciduous conifer? She's like, I thought about the ginkgo tree. So she would have had us beat there in terms of the quiz, the little mini quiz. But she also talks about how she has brought up coelacanths and horseshoe crabs as she is a science teacher. So thank you for reaching out and sharing your passions with us, Vanessa.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Yeah, it was nice
You're
hearing
the best.
from you.
Cool. You're the best. That's what I said in the email. So
If anybody else wants to send us an email, where do they send it to?
a Megatherium Club podcast at gmail.com.
Looking forward to hear from you guys.
Looking forward to it. Seriously, if you have anything you want to say, we would love it. We're also trying to get a bigger social media
Presents.
presence, thank you, across different platforms. So look for us on there eventually. But for now, email us. I think that's the best way to get in contact.
Is there any social media handles that they can search for if they want to follow the Megatherium Club podcast?
Yeah, there is the Twitter handle, which is Megatherium Pod. Megatherium Club Pod, right? Is that what it
Yeah,
is?
I think so. And there should be a TikTok, Megatherium Club Podcast, I think is just the name of the TikTok. Something like that. I'll double check. Yeah, please reach out if you have anything to add, anything to correct, or if you want future episode suggestions. We'd love to have that. So, all right.
Yeah, and tell your friends about us. We're on all podcast formats or platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever you're listening to it right now. Tell your friends about us. We'd love to get more
Yeah.
people
Oh.
involved with the Megatherium Club, and we want to hear from more people too.
Well, as always, we love you guys, and I love you guys, and we'll end it. How?
How, How?